Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Jackie Kiger, a professor here at the University of Arizona Global Campus, and I'll be your host for this session. The session, What I Think You Really Think of Me, How Students of Color Perceive Instructor Thoughts and Attitudes Towards Them. By joining us today, you acknowledge that this session is being recorded and will be shared with TLC-related materials. Microphones will be muted for this presentation, but we encourage you to post questions and comments in the chat. Now, when I say chat, please use the Zoom chat at the bottom of your screen, not the Whova app chat that's probably located on the right. Also, we have enabled live transcription. If you would like to use it, click the live transcription button at the bottom of your Zoom window. Now, I'm pleased to introduce to you Dr. Newton Miller, Elizabeth LaFontaine, Maya Johnson, Dr. Brian Weatherby, and Dr. Arletha Vondel, all of the University of Arizona Global Campus. Dr. Miller, the microphone is yours.
Well, good day, everyone. Good day, everyone. Make sure I'm not muted and everyone can hear me. There you go. I see a head shaking. That's the worst thing on these things. You start talking and 3 minutes later, someone says, hey, we can't hear you. So welcome to our session today. It is called What I Think You Really Think About Me. How Students of Color Perceive Instructor Thoughts and Attitudes Toward Them. So just to give you a real quick background before we let our panelists take it away. The theory behind this whole session is that we are, as educators, we get a lot of times where we look at data, we analyze it, we evaluate it, and we make some presumptions, we draw some conclusions about the students we serve. We may have a survey or two or something along those lines, but very rarely do we create a platform, do we create a place where students can raw, unfiltered, say what they think, say what they know, and share their experiences around what's going on in their education experience and their journey. So that's kind of one of the premises behind this, so we can learn from our students and give our students an opportunity to speak. So as we were coming up with this session, there's a professor, Latrice Johnson from University of Alabama, actually. She did some research and came up with a term called failure narrative. And that term failure narrative basically says that in general, most of the educators, not most of, but a lot of educators in K-12 through higher ed overwhelmingly have a premise that students of color need social emotional learning skills and tend to have more deficits than other students that they encounter. So inherently, there is a overall belief based on surveys and research that has been done that students of color tend to be more deficient and in need of some type of intervention, whether from a teacher or peers or whatever the case may be. So this is kind of the research that this young lady came up with, right? So when they talk about teacher expectations, Gary Oates is another gentleman, and this is one of the things that he said. He said that with the whole issue with teacher expectations, the teachers are expecting students to really need that social emotional learning, to need those interventions and things of that sort. And then coming behind that, a study was done by a young lady named Shelvin, a gentleman named Rivadeneira, and Zimmerman, a combined study. And they looked into a thing called stereotype threat. Now, stereotype threat is basically saying that students of color, when they think that their performance on a high stakes assessment or something along those lines is going to confirm negative stereotypes that they've heard about their racial or ethnic group, then it leads to added stress, which then can actually result in failure, the failure that they were afraid of purporting. So wanted to throw that information out there first, because there's a lot of things that a lot of people have said. And I'm wondering how they talk to our students. So we have some students here. We have two doctoral, we have actually an alumni Dr. Vondell, we have, I believe, Mr. Weathersby, he is in a doctoral program right now, finishing up his dissertation. We have Elizabeth LaFontaine, and she's working on her bachelor's degree right now. I always applaud my bachelor's students. That's the hardest one, I think, anyway. and we have Maya Johnson, who is not on camera right now. Hopefully she comes. I see her name. You can turn your camera on so we can see you. Who is a graduate student right now. Thank you. Is a graduate student right now with us here at the University of Arizona Global Campus. So I'm going to, can we start with you, Dr. Vondell, because you are the farthest away. You're coming to us from South Africa, I believe. So
yes,
I'm going to give you an option here. You can either tell us anything, because I know that you're very learned in this area, about the topic of perceptions the students of color have about the perceptions they think that their instructors have, or you can share with us why an educator, an experience you had with an educator, and why that experience was special or memorable to you, whether it was positive or negative.
okay. Well, thank you again, Dr. Miller. Thank you, everyone, for being here. It is really an honor to have been asked to be part of this panel. And just to share a little bit about my background. So to the bachelor's person that's there on the panel, keep working really hard. The 4 years may seem like a long time, but it'll go by really quickly. And then you'll be on to your master's and hopefully on to your doctorate. So, I wish you all the best. As far as my experiences as a student, I've been to UAGC, State University of New York in Albany, and California Southern University. And what I found was that the majority of my educators were not people of color. So I've only had 2 educators. One was Asian, and another one was, I believe she was Jamaican. And what I found was that my best memory or my best experience was with, I'll just name him, Dr. Rentler. He had attended 2 courses. I had him for 2 courses during my education with UAGC, and I later chose him to be my dissertation chair. And I chose him because of how he treated me, during my time in the 2 courses. What I found was that a lot of instructors, or in my experience, educators don't, and it could be because they're bombarded with, so much work, that they don't really fully review your work. They'll look at some things, but they won't fully look at everything. They don't fully review everything. With him, the reason that he stands out, or he stood out for me, was because he always challenged me. He seemed to be invested in my education as well as in my progress. I remember on one of my papers that I submitted, he gave me a lot of feedback. And one of the comments that stood out was, "This has no substance." Like he said that about one of my statements in one of my papers, that this has no substance. So that made me go back, do a little bit more research, and provide that, a fuller context of what I was talking about, in the paper. So I think that when you get educators like that who aren't afraid to challenge students, to make them, step up and, be all that they can be. If there's potential, if they see potential in you, if they're invested in you, they're going to challenge you. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. Like I said before, I had two other educators, the only two that were people, of color. One was Asian, and the entire semester, everything that I submitted, she only spoke positive. She never gave me a negative comment or a constructive comment, I'll say. I didn't feel like I really grew in that course because as a student, at the time as a student, there's no way I could be perfect. There's no way. There had to have been areas where, I'm a very good writer. I am, but as a student, you're not perfect. You're not. You're trying to get to where they're at. So for her never to have challenged me or never to have given me any kind of constructive feedback that was negative or challenging, I really don't think that I really grew in that course. But just, I know we only have a few minutes, but just to wrap it up. So the reason that I chose Dr. Rentler as my chair and the person that stood out for me was because I felt that he was invested. He didn't mind, giving negative or constructive feedback that challenged me. So, and I think that we all need that in order to grow. So, thank you. I hope I answered the questions.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you. So where are we getting this exercise?
Newton, you might need to unmute yourself because I inadvertently muted you when I muted somebody else.
There you go. Is that better? Okay.
Yes, sir.
So that one wasn't on me that time, right? So there's some research out there, just kind of follow up on what Dr. Vondel says, that has been done with some teachers of color, and as far as the term high expectations and how does that occur. So there has been some disparity or some difference in same race teachers as different race teachers across the board, and the expectations that are kind of set forth. So I think you just experienced that, Dr. Vondel. Thanks for sharing that. How about we move on over to our bachelor student, Elizabeth LaFontaine. Thank you for joining. If you want to go ahead and unmute, you can do the same thing. Either tell us about an experience you had with an educator or something you want to elaborate on as far as perceptions that students of color may have about their instructors.
Hello, I'm Elizabeth. I will share an experience that I experienced at Texas Community College when I was living in Texas. I have a disability, a learning disability. I have dyslexia. And so I tend to stumble and stutter reading out loud and having to read long chapters. And being at Texas Community College, I was trying to get accommodations to be able to finish my assignments in a reasonable time, but giving me more time to read because it takes me a little bit of time. And unfortunately, there was not many professors of color, but I did have one that spoke up for me to be able to receive accommodations. When I was a student there, I was making C's and D's. I was very discouraged to continue college. I wanted to just drop out, which I did. I dropped out and gave up because no one was hearing me, and no one was giving me the resources to get retested as an adult. to show my disability. One thing I can say about UAGC that I've admired a lot about, and the professors, Dr. Miller being one of my professors at the time, they accommodated me with no questions asked. When I spoke of my disability, they were, okay, let's see how we can help you. We want your college journey to be smooth and successful. So however we can help you, we'll do that. And that was something that I wasn't used to receiving, especially coming from Texas Community College. I was like, whoa, okay, so this is going to be awesome. And I have to say that having those professors, when I email them and tell them about my accommodations, having an open mind and reaching out to me and saying, is there anything that you need? Are you doing, I see that you struggled here. Can I help you this way or help you that way? I received that from this university. So I am like so blown away. And so that's my experience.
I don't know why my mute button keeps sticking, but thank you for that. So just a follow-up question for you. Did you think that your experience with not getting the accommodations, do you think that had anything to do with just insensitivity for folks, exceptional students, or do you think it had anything to do with your ethnic background?
Honestly, I'm not very sure. I would like to not think that it had to do anything with my race, but and part of me felt like it did, because the people that I was speaking to and trying to get the help from were not of color, and they weren't really hearing me. They kept pushing me off and not acknowledging what I'm trying to say. They kept saying, well, maybe if you give yourself more time to read earlier and not read at night, and all these different suggestions. But I was trying to tell them it doesn't matter what time of the day I read, when I read, my eyes and everything just gets tired and things just start not making sense, and they didn't hear me. So
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And just by the way, I'd happen to have Elizabeth in my course, and she did a fabulous job. Did really well. The course is run by something called what's the name of the program we use again in there? Packback, right? And so she did a fabulous. She was actually one of the leaders in the course. I think you got a lot of shout outs each week, I think. So thank you for that. Let's go on over to Mr. Weathersby, Brian Weathersby. Again, you have free reign here. I know you have a lot to say, so I'm just going to kind of be quiet and let you go in the direction that you like to go.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Miller. First, thank you and the University of Arizona Global Campus for allowing me here. It's great to be here with this beautiful panel. And it's a conversation that the first step in a billion-mile journey, first bite of a herd of elephants. And we just need to keep having these conversations. Elizabeth, I applaud you. I applaud you first for being vulnerable and talk about your disability. You do not know how much that's going to help somebody just hearing you say that. Somebody else is going to be able to say, okay, Elizabeth did it, I can do it. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your vulnerability. As far as teachers, I have to say, Dr. Sundstrom here at the University of Arizona Global Campus, she was my very first professor in the doctoral program. And the same thing that Dr. Vondell said, it was the fact that she actually took stake in me in my education. It wasn't just a checkbox. Like, okay, he's doing the work, checkbox, move on. She actually took time to say, okay, you're great at this, but you need to improve on this. And that really gave me the courage, because I came to the doctoral program scared, like, why am I doing this? Where am I going? And just having a teacher like that cared actually had me, let me go on. So, and we all remember it's an emotional thing. We remember the people that come close to us. And then as everybody else was talking, I started thinking about, so who were the teachers that really touched me? The first teacher was my mother. She actually had a master's degree in education, from Jackson State. Hey, Jackson State, go Jackson State. My lullaby music. She actually had a master's in Jackson State in 1970. So she just having a mother that in the household that was that interested in education was great. But the one teacher is African American male. I'm about to show my age. I went to school back when corporal punishment was acceptable, especially in Mississippi. It was, and Mr. Jackson would, if you were late with your homework or if you didn't have it or anything else, he would always give you a second chance, but it came with a cost, a reminder. And we all know what a reminder is. But the kids actually, I won't say we look forward to it, but we appreciated that, it's okay. We understood that there were consequences for not getting your stuff done, but we appreciated that second chance. And life's all about getting second chances. So I'm actually on both sides of the fence. I actually teach computer science classes at Solano Community College. So as an educator, I too try to be very careful and make sure that all my students get what they need. I always tell them, I say, don't worry about your grades. What I need from you is when you walk out of this class that you can program in .NET, that you can program in C#, that you can spin up a virtual machine. That's all I care about. And if you can do that at the end of the course and you really want that A, I'll let you earn it. So, but again, thank you, Dr. Miller. Thank you, University of Arizona Global Campus. And I look forward to the rest of this conversation.
Well, thank you. I keep wanting to say Dr. Weathersby because it just sounds right. But thank you. And you can see why we just had to have him on this panel. And it was really rough for me because right after this panel, we have a panel of educators who are going to talk about the lack of educators of color and why that's a problem for everyone. So I didn't know which panel to put Brian on, right? Should have put him on both, but his time is valuable. So thank you for that. So we have one more panelist, student panelist, Maya Johnson. So Maya, could you either the same thing, either tell us about an experience you had with an educator, why it was memorable, why, positive or negative, or share with us something you want us to know about the topic of perceptions of students of color with their instructors.
No problem. Just thank you for allowing me to be on this panel. And I do love the stories that I've heard so far. And I agree that unfortunately, during my bachelor's with UAGC, some of my Black professors didn't push me as hard as my white professors did. I think the main one that stood out was when I did the honors program and I had Clifford as a teacher. The first paper I wrote, he gave me a 0 on it. And then in the comments, he put, call me so we can discuss your paper. If you do not call me, I will give you another grade. It won't be a 0, but it won't be the grade I feel you deserve. So once I called him, he not only gave me tips and tricks to make my paper better, he also helped me when it came to citation, because that was a big problem for me. He gave me different websites. He told me different ways I can configure it, how I can do the resources, how not every time that the UAGC library, that's how long I've been at school, the UAGC library, the citations are not always correct. So just try to do it this way. And he wanted to assure me that he wasn't singling me out when he told me he gave the whole class 0s. He was like, he felt that we all could do better. He said, because he knew we had it in us because we made it to the honors program, but he just felt that the paper, it wasn't the level he thought it should be. And it wasn't harmful or hurtful. It was actually helpful that he actually took the time and explained what I needed to do and to read between the lines and to make sure I got the grade I was going to get. Because with my first Black professor, she gave me an A on a paper. And as I progressed, I realized she should have gave me a C on that paper. It wasn't good. Like, my writing has progressed, but I guess it was good for starting, but I felt that it could have been more. especially talking about psychology. It's so much more you can get into. It was like the bare minimum. And she passed me for it. And she didn't give me any critique. She said, I loved your paper, great ideas. But my paper didn't flow. Like my topic, I didn't have a thesis statement. My paragraphs didn't match. It was like I was just writing. I didn't transition my paper correctly like I was supposed to, that I learned to do as I kept going. And I can say it wasn't until I got to Clifford that I realized that my citations were wrong the whole time, but the teachers wasn't telling me. Like all my teachers were just passing me on my citation and my grammar and everything. But then I got to Clifford and he said, you've been doing your citations wrong this whole time. I'm sorry that it took you to the end of your bachelor's degree for you to realize that your teachers didn't tell you that, but that's what it is. So that's why he stands out, because he was honest and truthful. Even though he shocked me by giving me that 0, it actually helped put me in the mind space that I needed to do to develop myself as a writer at the school.
Well, thank you for that information. Real quick follow-up question for you. So you said that in the beginning of your program, you had you said it was a Black teacher, gave you A, should have given you a C. And then it wasn't until the end of your program when you had Clifford where you got some corrections. So in between there, how many other instructors or teachers do you think you had? And what do you think their demographic was? Were they mostly Black, mostly white?
They were mostly white. And that's the thing, because when I got to Dr. Barnett's class, and I had to take some of my papers from my previous courses, she turned them back with correction. She was like, Maya, this is what your professor should have told you when you was in these courses. And she told me all the citations were wrong, even though after Clifford, I realized they were wrong too. And she was telling me about my flow. And I did submit these papers to the Writing Center, and all I got was good paper. Thank you, Allison. You answered all the questions correctly and I understood it. That's all I got from the Writing Center. Not that my paper flowed or that it went from topic to topic how I needed to go. So you knew the last sentence of my last paragraph would be the introduction leading up to the next paragraph.
Got it.
And I don't want to say that it's because they didn't care. I don't know if they didn't care or not. Just all I know is that when I got to between Clifford and Dr. Barnett, that's when they started telling me, hey, your papers were good. You did good started off, but it should have been worked on a tiny little bit more because you are a good writer.
Got you. And that's the reason I asked that follow-up question, because I didn't want it to be left in the air. My follow-up question was actually going to be, do you think that had anything to do with your race or ethnicity, or was it just, I'm going to say, a gap in instruction, period? Because I don't want to leave this, because of the topic of the discussion, I don't want to leave it out there that we're attacking any one ethnicity of instructors. So
no, I completely agree, because I can count on one hand how many Black instructors I've had during my bachelor's, and it's only 3. The rest of them were white. I didn't have any other ethnicities. I had maybe 5 males, but I only had 3 Black. But I don't think it's because I was Black, because you can create your profile picture. So I had a picture of my face with my locks, so they already knew I was Black. Like, ain't no changing that.
Right.
But I do believe that not just the 2 teachers I mentioned, every teacher that I did email that either my daughter had COVID or she was in the emergency room or I got sick, they all emailed me back, not, oh, you should have done your paper earlier. They said, just let us know when you can turn in your paper. Just take care of yourself or your daughter, no matter what the race was. I can say that about all the teachers.
Got you. So let me ask another question. And this question is to all the panelists. Whoever would like to answer this one, you can jump in. But this question is a real simple one, but it's a very pointed one. And it is this. What do you think matters most the race of your educator or their cultural competence? And why? I'll say it one more time while you're thinking to give you a little bit of wait time. What do you think matters most? The race of your educator or their cultural competence? And why is that?
Hey, Dr. Miller, I'll jump in on that one, if you don't mind.
Thank
You
you.
know, I mean, I don't think it's even a question. It's cultural competence because I mean, I know plenty of people, plenty of different races that are highly competent as educators, and some are not as competent as educators. So, and some understand how to be themselves and be in a room as themselves and not try to emulate or act like somebody they're not to try to impress the room.